Can you say that again? What's the story? What's the story? That's the way they say it in Ireland. Okay, so it basically means how's it going, what's happening. But this idea of story, we all have a unique individual story. But have you noticed that sometimes sharing the story, sometimes sharing the stuff that's happened in our lives can be difficult? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Sometimes it can be difficult to talk about this Jesus guy who has affected our lives. We go to church, we go to youth group on Sunday nights, but whenever we go to school on Monday mornings, and sharing our faith sometimes can be difficult. I want to read this verse, and it's from Isaiah 12:4. Oh, we're not going there again. Isaiah, it says this. In that day you will say, okay, give praise to the Lord, call on his name, make known among the nations what he has done, and proclaim that his name is exalted. So here we see in this book that God is telling us, make my name known among the nations. Tell the world about how good I am. Do you know that you have a unique story? And nobody knows your story better than you. Nobody in this world knows your story better than you do. So you might be saying, okay, cool, Derek. I get what you're trying to say. I should tell my story. But why? Why is it important? I've got this story about my experiences and what's happened in my life. But why do I need to share it? Can I not just keep it to myself? Because that's pretty cool about how God's worked. But here we see in this book that God is telling us to go and tell the world about what he has done. Sharing your story with others can be a powerful way to say, hey, God, thanks. Thanks for what you've done in my life. I'm so grateful. And I want to share that with other people. Also, sharing about how you came to faith, how you came to know Jesus, how he has made an impact in your life, can help others come to know Christ as well. They're like, oh, hey, I totally see Jesus in that person's life. Hey, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? This idea of story is incredible. Have you got somebody, I want you to think about your life right now. I want you to think about an individual in your life that maybe doesn't know Jesus. Okay, can you think of somebody? Somebody that you know maybe that doesn't know Jesus, but you want them to. You really, really would love them to actually be here tonight. You'd love them to be sitting beside you. You would love for them to come to church on Sunday. You have the ability to share your story, to tell that individual about Jesus. And here's the thing about sharing your story. It should never be about you, but it should always be about God. God, you've done this in my life. I want to share about you. This idea of sharing story, though, can be difficult, and it can be scary. I remember my youth pastor. Actually, I didn't have a youth pastor. I remember my pastor of my church asking me to share my story. And guys, I was scared. I was terrified because my story, all of the stuff that happened in my life, I had attached so much shame to it. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot tell my story. There's so much awful stuff that I've done. God, how can you use this story for good? How can you use all of this brokenness and all of this stuff? And that's when I heard the voice of God say, I have given you a story. Go to the nations and tell of my goodness. And I didn't know what that meant at that time, but I had this crazy experience of when I got to go to Africa, and I got to go to this country called Togo. And when I went there, they don't speak English. And so I thought, well, okay, God, this could be fun. I'm here and part of a missions team, and the pastor of this church in Togo asked me to come and share my story. And I'm like, I can't even speak your language. You don't understand English. How is this going to happen? And that day, a translator happened to be coming through town. And a translator happened to be in our church service. And so I got to share my story, and this translator got to translate it into their local language, which was incredible. This verse of God saying, go to the nations and tell of my good works that I've done through you. But sometimes we think that we have to have this incredible story. Sometimes we have to think of, oh, something bad happened to me, or I had this big moment of when I came to Jesus. It's not true. It's true for some of us. Some of you guys may have just grown up in church all your life. You may have been coming to this church since you were born. And that's awesome. Your story is no more less than anyone else's. Your story is unique. Your story is individual, and it has value. So never say to yourself or to someone else that your story is invalid, your story isn't important, because you have a story that can affect lives. You have a story to tell. And tonight, we're going to have a couple of people that are going to be sharing their story with you guys. We're going to have two of our students and one of our leaders, and they're going to come and just basically talk about how God has affected their lives. But first of all, we're going to watch this little video.
Living room. Thanks for coming to my home. No, seriously. We had such a good conversation at lunch today. I really enjoyed it. So I want to further that conversation with you guys and talk some more about our faith and our story and how Jesus has affected your life. Tell me again, just in a nutshell, what's your Jesus story? Where did you begin in your faith journey?
Well, I always grew up in the church. My parents always had me go to church, and so I never really questioned like what I should do about that, but I always enjoyed it, and so I went with it, and I just came closer to God and Jesus.
Me too. I've been in the church all my life. It wasn't an option when I was a kid. It was, okay, it's Sunday morning, you go to church. And so I did, and we talked about this earlier, that I never felt like I had a Jesus story. I just knew Jesus. And, people would say, oh, I had an epiphany. Mm-hmm. And Jesus, had a moment with me, and I never felt that. But I know that you have. Yep. Tell me about it.
So I'm I always went to church. I always went on Sundays and stuff, but not every Sunday. But I never really got who is Jesus, who is God. I never really had, the connection until last year when I, finally understood who they were and what they do for people, what they do. And because I joined small group, and it made a huge impact on my life. Especially on God Speak, which is a little thing our small group does for Bible studies. And I had a connection on Breakthrough last year, and it was pretty good.
Tell me about it. Tell me again. I want to hear the story again.
Okay, so I was sitting there totally blanking out, wasn't focusing on anything. I was in the balcony, and all I could see was I couldn't hear anything at that point, and I was just not paying attention. And all I saw was the huge light just was making me blind. And then I heard the speaker guest come on and was just telling this emotional story, and everyone was breaking down, and I just thought, wow, that's a sign of God, because the light was just on me, and I just heard that and nothing else. So.
And that was your moment.
Awesome.
And that's your story
Yep.
to share. I love that you shared it with us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
When have, I don't want this to be like a conversation, but since I have a mic in my face, when is a time for both of you guys, when maybe you felt closer or farther away from God? I know I was sharing with you that a lot of people, when they are in times of struggle, they feel like they are closer to God. If there's something in their life going on, and they turn to God and feel closer to Him. And I feel somewhat of an opposite way, where I feel closer to God when I'm happiest. But I think it's because I'm close to God that I am happy. So when I'm in times of struggle, not that I don't go to God, but I'm not as focused on God, obviously, and that's why I'm having troubles. I'm not letting my troubles go and let Him take care of them, and so I'm farther away from Him. And then when times of goodness are around, I have become, after talking to you guys, to realize, well, that's because He's in my life, and I'm making Him a part of it, and so that makes my life better. So it's kind of circular effect there. But what about you guys? When have you had some
Okay,
times?
so it's kind of the opposite. It's like when the most I need God is when I'm struggling or when I have a problem or when I want to pray for someone else. It's when I need God the most and when I'm closer to Him because I need Him more. And then when I'm the happiest, I don't necessarily need Him or need to pray for anyone or pray for anything, so I'm farther away.
You don't think about him as much. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I feel the same way because I mean, when I'm kind of farther or more distant, then like I really go to him a lot more. I mean, like I should pray to him all the time, and I do, but like I feel like it's a lot more meaningful to me at least. And so, and then I mean, when I'm happy, I'm thankful for him because I know that it's like because he's doing this all. And so, I don't really have a time when I'm like always far from him, but there's definitely this connection that when you're struggling, it's just like you definitely go to him more because you just want his help and his guidance.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that, and I was probably more that way when I was your age, and of course that's changed over the years, and now I feel very different than that. But what else did we talk about that I wanted to ask you guys again?
Oops.
Who are some of the people? Who are some people in your life that have made a difference, that have made you grow in your faith or are part of your story?
Well, my parents definitely because they're the ones that had me go to church every Sunday morning. And if there was ever a time when I was like tired or just didn't want to like get up that morning, they were always like making sure that I was going still. And that really affected me because I mean, if I hadn't gone, then it would have become a habit. And then I mean, I wouldn't be going to church as often. And then also just all the like youth ministers, especially the people when I'm like on like a church trip or choir tour, because I definitely feel like I'm growing with Christ on those trips. And so all the people there helping us out, they're definitely helping because they make you feel closer to God.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Manny?
For me, like when I joined small group, it was especially you, Stephanie, and Neil who helped me.
Couldn't be with us in this group tonight. I was hoping they could come and chat. We'll talk with them. We'll tell them our faith story later.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway.
Yeah, y'all have just, and the youth ministers and stuff, because my parents, they've always gone to church and done it, but I feel like I never really went to them because I was really hesitant of asking questions. So I never really had the answers. So that's why I
remember that
found
as a
the
kid.
answers
I was telling you
last
that.
year.
It was always a given that I went to church and that I was born Presbyterian and my grandfather was a Presbyterian minister and he christened me into the church, when I was, a couple months old, and then went through the church and went through confirmation and thought, that I was going to get down on my knees and they were going to put their hand, I was going to confess, and then the lightning was going to hit me and I was going to be like, oh my gosh, I know God. And that happened, and, I'd have all the answers. And so I had a hard time going to anybody because I was embarrassed. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to know this stuff.
Yeah,
and I
same.
don't. So I think it's really cool that, so I don't know that I ever went to my parents, but it's cool that we have people that we can go to and get those answers and not feel embarrassed or ashamed because we all have questions. And like I was telling you guys earlier, most of those questions are never going to be answered and until the after world later on. And that's okay. Right? What about friends? Do they ever play a role in your
Some of
faith
them
journey?
do.
Here's a question. How often do you tell your Jesus story? I don't. I'll be honest. That's really hard for me to do. It's really hard for me to sit down because I really didn't think I had one.
To some of my friends, I do.
You do?
But the others, I don't necessarily just say, hey, God.
Seriously. We should do that. We should just go this week and be like, hey,
God.
apes and God.
Science.
Dinosaurs. Tattoos. I forgot about tattoos. Yeah. We should just go up to people randomly and do that. See what happens. What about you? Do you share your story?
I don't share my story often. I mean, I talk to like some adults sometimes, my small group leaders, like if I have questions. But I mean, I don't like share my story often because just like you, I didn't like really feel like I had much to share. But I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people share our same story, and so you can get along with them on that level. And then with other people, I mean, you can talk to them because if they don't even know Christ yet, then that, like, just talking to them that way, it might be an easier way for them to come into like the church. Just just start going and then go every Sunday, and then eventually.
I think it's interesting because I feel more comfortable talking to like you guys about my faith story when the people that I need to be talking about my story to are the people that don't know God necessarily, and they're probably the ones that want to hear it more potentially than the people that already know it. And we need to really try to push ourselves and do that more. So hopefully us talking about it has helped us. I know it's helped me because it's really made me think this week about what my story is and what do I have to share and what are we talked about our gifts within the church and made me really think about it and think, well, I do have a story.
Yeah, because when I found when I like had the conversation with my dad, and he told me my gift and my talent.
Yeah.
I never expected him to say anything like that because I just never expected it from my dad, and he just told me, and I thought that was like a huge sign from God.
Yeah, we were talking about signs from God and
your talent.
When you have them and not even realizing that it's a sign, usually not knowing that it's a sign until after the fact.
Yeah.
And so today at lunch, it was pretty cool. Maddie was like, "Oh my gosh, that was a sign! I didn't even know it."
Yeah.
Yeah. It's made me recognize a lot of things this week that I just really hadn't thought about before. Made me much more comfortable talking about this.
And
Well,
being
keep going.
like being more open about God just makes it more. I just feel so much more closer because
More confident.
Yeah, more confident in my relationship with him. Just all of that.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, guys, can we give them a hand? Can we just... And we hope that you've just enjoyed just listening to people just sharing their story, and welcome to our living room. And so we're going to be doing this again next week. We're going to have a couple of more students sharing with us and just basically telling you guys that you have got this incredible story. You may not think it, but your story is unique. It is individual. And God wants you to share your story with those people around you. And you can see in that they just had a conversation. Just a simple conversation, and that's the way that could be like for you tomorrow when you go into your schools, is over lunch. Simple conversation about how has Jesus affected your life. So I hope that you enjoyed that. Just a couple of reminders.